Good morning, everybody. We are super excited to be able to share with you a little bit about the mission trip that we took. We left out of here November 10th. These guys came back a little earlier than me, end of November, and then I stayed another week through the 4th. For those of you who don't know, this church loves giving to missions, and we are so grateful for your faithfulness and your generosity in doing that. You allow us to support 8, 10 different missionaries? Yeah, a lot, all over the world and here locally as well. But just a little background on this particular missionary. Kim, I went to high school with Kim, and then we were all in church together, so we have known Kim for a very, very long time. And Kim and I went to Peru, I guess for the first time about 20 years ago, and really felt a burden for the people there. And went back a couple years later. I think Kim went 3 or 4 times. I only went twice. And on the second trip, the missionary that we were visiting at the time, his name was James, was kind of burned out. He'd been doing it a long time. He wanted to come back home and be with his family. And Kim and I were like, man, should we just buy his mission base and just take over? What do you think? You know, just kind of how you dream and stuff. And I sort of let that dream die because I came back from that second mission trip and found out I was pregnant. And so I wasn't going to be doing a whole lot of mission trips to Peru. God had another baby for me to take care of. But Kim ran with that, and she started Off the Trail Missions approximately 16 years ago. And shortly thereafter moved there. Was attacked on the river by bandits, shot at, ended up meeting the commandant of the police force there, the drug task force, ended up falling in love with him, and he with her, mostly about their shared love for humanitarian aid and for the people in Peru. And so Kim and Juan have been doing this for many, many years. And you can see in the bottom picture, that is Peru, and each of those blue areas is a place that they visit every year at Christmas time. And we did about 6 of them, I think, that are on that. And the name of the mission is Off the Trail, and you can kind of see why, but you don't really appreciate how off the trail it is till you get there, because after you fly out from Lima to wherever you're going that you think is off the trail, you then have a 3-hour train ride or a 4-hour car ride or something, and it's they really go where nobody goes. They reach the people that nobody reaches. And in several places that we went, the comment was, "I can't believe you came. We've never seen a white person before," or things of that nature. And so we're going to go through this basically chronologically as best as we can. And I've asked these guys to just kind of comment on the couple of things that touched them the most. And so we'll kind of talk back and forth about different things, and hopefully we'll have time for a couple questions at the end, but who knows, because that took a lot longer than it should have. All right. Oh, I was going to say next, but that's me. All right. So I just broke it into phases. Every road goes through Lima, and by that I mean every flight, because there are no good roads really to connect any of those places. So everywhere we started was Lima. And so then when I call it a phase, it's where we flew to from Lima. So Pucallpa, which is, and it's actually across the street from Pucallpa. The street outside the base separates Pucallpa and Ucayali. And so if you paid attention to that map, you won't see Pucallpa, but you see Ucayali kind of right in the middle there. And so that's where we started. That's where the base is. I took a picture coming in off the airplane, and then there's some of the base. And I just had to put the mango trees in there because they have massive, massive mango trees that are so prolific, and they drop on the tin roofs there, and you think you're under attack. Lower right-hand corner would be the 3 of us along with Juan and Kim in their red shirts, and then the couple is Dolly and Gogo. They're a married couple, and they do all of the cooking for the base whenever there are visitors there, whenever they host a group. So Juan and Kim do not have a private chef all the time, sadly. The next picture on the other side of that, we visited Ariel, who is Kim's daughter. So when Kim started going to Peru, Ariel was in middle school, I think. She was on that boat that was attacked on the river on one of her very first trips there when she was 16, and she said, "This is not going to stop me. This is where I'm meant to be. I'm not afraid. I'm coming here." She fell in love with one of the other police officers that helped them on that raid. They have 3 beautiful children, and we celebrated Christmas with them. Oh, too fast. Okay, so day 1, the front top center is day 1 in Pucallpa, and they're not going to say this, but John and Kathy donated money for 3 wheelchairs to be given to people. And that first woman that Kathy is seen kissing there was the first woman that we gifted a wheelchair to. And then just kind of going around, those are other places that we did out of Ucayali or Pucallpa. You can see we saw the Bora tribe off the river, and the middle on, oh, I have a laser. I forgot. How does that work? Oh. Never mind. So 9 o'clock for me is we were invited actually to a radio station. No, TV station. I forgot it was TV, to celebrate Christmas with some kids there. Juan and Kim are something of hometown celebrities. Juan especially, he does a news broadcast every week about good news, things that are going on in the country, and Off the Trail is featured there quite a bit. Lower right corner, you see a man in a wheelchair. They help out this group of wheelchair athletes. Basketball, right? Basketball athletes who won like the regionals. They were going like to the national, the country finals for this thing. So they were pretty excited about that. They need better wheelchairs. As we go along, I'm going to just drop little nuggets of needs. They need new wheelchairs in order to compete at the highest level. So, yes, sports wheelchairs. You know, the good ones that you see. So they're doing this just like in hospital wheelchairs, but you know those low riders with the big kicked out wheels that people can use, they would like some of those. All right, and so then day 2, we delivered the second wheelchair. That's JB carrying the wheelchair to this beautiful woman outside of Pucallpa, and this one touched JB, and he wanted to talk about it.
So the way Kim and Juan found out about this woman was that there was a teacher. This woman who you see in the wheelchair, she's caring for her granddaughter. I don't even recall what the situation was with her daughter, but that woman was caring for her granddaughter. Her granddaughter's teacher is the one who found out about this family situation, is that her student, evidently the student's mother is not in the picture currently, but found out about this grandmother who has no legs, whether they were amputated when she was younger or whatever. But to get around, I don't even know how she really got around daily, because when you visit the house itself was very small. So, you know, perhaps the size of some people's kitchens, you know. But very, very small home, and, you know, dirt floors and wood floors, whatever. But how she cares for her granddaughter, I really have no idea on a daily basis. It's just amazing to me. But yet her granddaughter, I'm sure she helps out as much as she can. But when we delivered this wheelchair to her and unboxed it and kind of set it up, there were tears shared amongst everybody. Me included. To see her and her granddaughter and the teacher just all being so grateful for this one item that allows her to actually get around without having to do whatever, right? Could you imagine having to get around everywhere you go, crawling or whatever, right? Just to see her face and then to put her in the wheelchair was fabulous. And so you can't experience that without just it wrenching your heart. I mean, truly. And it was so amazing that we were able to provide that little, what we would call just a little nugget of comfort to allow her to get around on a daily basis, everywhere around. Now she's mobile. She can go into the kitchen. She can help prepare food easier, better, quicker, whatever. Care for the needs of her granddaughter. But it was the teacher who reported this to Kim and Juan. That's how they found out about it. And so they just acted on it, right? And so in part, this is kind of the theme with Off the Trail Missions. It started as a feeding ministry for children and stuff in the community, but it evolved into a few different things. But the current situation with Off the Trail Missions is they hear word through the grapevine of all sorts and all over the country, because they are that popular in the country of Peru, that Off the Trail Missions has reached so many in the whole country that they're receiving information of some needs here and there. And you'll hear it more and more from Kathy and Lynn. There's nowhere where there's not needs. We have our needs here in the country, the U.S., but it's a whole different level there. Wherever we went, it's in your face. We are completely blessed right here. But anyway, this was a wonderful thing. She touched our hearts. We all prayed together, and she was so grateful. And of course, we were grateful to be able to help and provide that.
Yeah. Thanks, JB. And we kind of, at the end of each day or section, Juan was famous for asking us, what was your moment? What was your favorite moment? And we turned it back on him and asked him what his favorite moment was. And he got tears in his eyes seeing the love that John had for this woman. Like so many people, when he was asked to put her in the wheelchair, he didn't hesitate a second, and he grabbed her in a big old bear hug. Like, he almost didn't put her down in the wheelchair. He was hugging her so tight for so long. And just that kind of love for the people, I think, really means a lot.
Let me add, go back.
Yes, sir.
I just want to point out Lynn's face in that bottom picture. It was awesome. I mean, perfect picture. And I just think that sums it up right there of the feeling we got.
Okay. More things that we did in Pucallpa. So a couple of these were kind of funny, but the one that is not, I'm going to try and see if I can do this. Is it this top one? Is it that? Oh, it is. Okay. So do you see this? This is the home where this family lives. And she also has a teenage daughter with special needs who was in the outside. This area right here, it's hard to tell, but it pokes out. And there's like buckets of water there. That's like their shower and toilet right there. On the inside is just a bare wooden floor that's kind of broken off, and the river, I would say, is out their back door, but is in their living room. So if you can see the river kind of coming up here, and it's not a beautiful, clean river like you think of. It is completely saturated with garbage. And we were there just as the river was beginning to rise, which means it's going to rise and rise and rise more, to the point where you go into these people's homes and you see hammocks, and then you realize, oh, in a month, they're going to, like, row to the hammock in a little dugout canoe or something. And if you see the size of that small child, like, I would be terrified to ever fall asleep, that kid's just going to be falling into the river as I'm sleeping. But look at her smile. Look at that woman's smile in that situation. Those kids were so happy to get those little balls, and she was so happy. Most of the places that we went in Pucallpa with the families, we took them a bag of food. I think the bag of food cost $8 to $10, but it was a big thing of salt, of rice, of sugar, pasta, things like that could carry them for a while. And just to know that she could feed her family for the next month gives her that kind of joy. We then went out to...
Hold on just one second.
Yeah, we're never going to get through this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm probably going to jump in a lot. But that house, the inside of that house, to say it was a wooden floor is an overstatement. Yeah. Because the slats of the wood were,
like
gaps. So they were basically planks. And there's water underneath this floor. Standing water, garbage, all out, everywhere. Trash, garbage, in the water. You could only imagine what the mosquito situation could be like at certain times of the year. And I didn't notice any mosquitoes straight away when we were there, but I could tell you is that just to look at that and to see, it's like, oh my, right?
Speaking of garbage, I'm going to move on just a little bit.
Okay. Go ahead.
The kind of lighthearted moment, if you see in the upper right-hand corner, we visited families that live at the landfill. The parents work there, and the kids are raised there, and the little walker thing that the kids in, they just basically harvested from the landfill, so they use the things that they find at the dump. But the little boy riding behind it was totally commando, totally naked, and he got on that thing like it was his throne and was riding it, and it was kind of great. We took the laughs where we could get them, I'll tell you. Okay, and then, so this is one of the schools that we visited. It's actually two different schools in the same neighborhood. The top one is the primary, preschool, and kindergarten, the top two pictures, and then the bottom one is the older kids who are no longer afraid of their parents or consequences. They're a little rowdier. But the reason this is named after Juan is there's a thing in Peru where if you see a piece of land and you just put up basically a tent on it and start living there, if you're there for a month without anybody kicking you off, you own it. And so these people had done that in this particular neighborhood and then just basically called the neighborhood Juan Silva Bocanegra, which is Juan's name, in the hopes that by calling themselves that, then they would get a lot of assistance from him. It would give them prestige and all of this stuff. And Juan went out there and said, hey, listen, if you're going to put my name on this, we're going to do it right. And he made them all locate the landowners, pay for it, register the property, and all of that. So now there is an actual sizable neighborhood there that bears his name. And when he saw how many kids there were, they off the trail built a small little schoolhouse for them. And then when more and more kids moved in, the government's like, oh yeah, I guess that is enough kids, we should build them a school. So they moved the little one-room thing that Off the Trail built and actually did build them a school. And so we visited that, and this is one that Kathy wanted to talk about.
Yeah, when we went to the schools, sometimes they would do a little program for us or whatever, but the primary school, which is the top two pictures, were very good, and we would go in and we would give them basically it's a little blow-up kickball kind of thing, and then kind of a Barbie doll for the girls, and then or a truck for the boys. And at the school, they actually gave us a little tour, and there's a little kitchen, and the parents come and help cook, for the kids for a lunch. And so they had a little like dessert for us and some drinks for us, which was wonderful because you're getting to try, some of their food. But there was a little girl who was just very standoffish. And she, you would try, some of the kids would just run up to you and hug you and they would love on you. Well, she wouldn't. And after a while, the kids had been allowed to play with their balls and everything. and she was just off by herself, and they started kicking him. Well, I started kicking back, and she just was kind of looking at me, and I'm like, I'm going to win this kid over. And when she started kind of kicking it to me, and it went off into kind of the mud over there, so I went to get it. And I think it was Lynn who said she got this look on her face like I was taking away her ball. And I was like, so I immediately, kicked it back to her. And the look of joy on her face when she realized that, no, she's not losing her ball. It's just, I went and got it, and that we could continue to play. And so by the time we left, she gave us a hug. And so I was like, okay, she's realized that, not all adults are there to kill your joy. But there was, we stand out, obviously, because we're white, but Kim actually really stands out because of that blonde hair. Really white. And so there were several places that some of the kids were afraid of her because of her blonde hair, and so they wouldn't come up to her. But after a while, you kind of win them over, and they realize you're okay. So.
And some of those did not. Some of those kids had never seen a white person before.
Yeah. So.
And so if any of you brains are like me and you think, well, if she's been there almost 20 years, why haven't they seen her before? They definitely, when they say off the trail, they go off the trail. They meet the needs of a group, and there are some groups that they go back, and this is the 5th year that they've been there and stuff like that. But the networking is so incredible that they are seeing new people a lot. And Kim is very, very pale with very, very blonde hair, and she's the whitest of us all. Okay, so still in Pucallpa, we still haven't left the Pucallpa area yet. Kim spoke of Miss Sarita when she was here last. This woman has been bedridden for 30 years. 30 years, has not left the bed. And she touched John.
Yeah, so they called her the queen. And she was very talkative. She loved the fact that she was getting visitors. And to have us come and see her, she just lit up. And the joy this woman has in her heart is just incredible. This woman, being bedridden 30 years, can't care for herself. She's got long hair, and her hair was well braided, so obviously that somebody else is doing that. She can't move, she could move her arms a little bit, but you could see that there's a white stick that she's holding there. And that stick is roughly 3.5 feet long, and it has, on the end of it, has a nail through it. It sticks sideways through it. And that's kind of her lifeline. She does everything she can with that stick. She adjusts her skirt or her shirt or scratches her head or, any number of things, but that's the only thing that she can do is to use that stick to help her own self for whatever possible thing she might need to use it for. For her to get around from place to place, she has to be lifted up and she has to be carried and taken for everything, right? So let your imagination run wild on that. But to talk to her, she was just a thrill. I kind of fell in love with her. Asked her if she was single.
I was going to say, she kind of fell in love with you too.
She was digging on me.
It was a little uncomfortable for the rest of us.
I let her feel my hair, and anyway, gave her a big old hug, and she, we all prayed together. She prayed for us, and she says that as far as Kim and Juan go, they've known her for a number of years, and she loves them dearly, and she prays for them. And now that with our visits, she said she would be praying for us daily, and we believe it. She was very strong in faith, and just a delight to visit. Loved meeting her. Be happy to see her again.
Yeah, I found it interesting that if I have a cold for more than a couple weeks, I'm like, Jesus, I'm just ready to go. I've done enough here. I'm ready to see you. This woman, her entire life is prayer. Yeah. All day long, every day, she prays for 30 years. Yeah. And John said now that she's met us, she's praying for us specifically, but she has been praying for this church for years, ever since Kim and Juan started seeing her, basically. And so when we were introduced to her, she knew exactly where we were from and why we were there. And she is an absolute delight and a hoot. She's not, oh no, and that's what I'm like, yeah, she's like, oh, I'm not ready to go. I've got more work to do here. I've got more prayers to pray. Yeah, praise God, for sure. All right, let's see. I think this is the end of the Pucallpa. We did a little bit of touristy picture up front, hugging the kids, another group photo. Okay, so in the last wheelchair, the third wheelchair.
Well,
right? What?
yeah.
The third.
But that group on the right, isn't that the deaf?
That's the deaf group. Yes.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So the lower right, we visited a deaf community, which was very interesting because we would speak and then someone would translate it into Spanish and then the Spanish person would sign it to the people. Delightful group of people. But the third wheelchair, so remember the first one was in the first slide and Kathy kissing the woman, and then the second one was the one John talked about. The third one that you see there was delivered. That's actually a personal friend of Juan's. He's a news reporter who has severe diabetes and hasn't been able to get around for a bit. And so we took that wheelchair to him. All right, we're done with Pucallpa. And there's only 6 more places to go. I'm just kidding. That was the big one. I feel like that was where and listen, we were exhausted every single day, multiple ministries going on. And just think about Kim and Juan, because they don't just do it at Christmas. They're doing it every day, all year long. But then we flew to Cusco. This was one of the places that I said, Kim, I want to come, but I want to go to Cusco and Lake Titicaca because I've never been, so let's go. And so they had never done ministry in Cusco before, but they knew a guy who knew a guy, and this guy right here in the Lakers deal, is some sort of Peruvian rapper. I guess he's semi-famous there. I don't know. Yes. I'm not into Peruvian music, and I'm not into rap. But he was a lovely person. We went to his family home, and tons and tons of kids there, many of them special needs. I don't know if you can tell that from that one. A lot of special needs kids there. So that was just basically a big old party. And then after we did that, we did just a very selfish thing, because I said, I want to see Machu Picchu. So we went to Machu Picchu. No real ministry there, but man, that place is amazing. If you ever get the chance, I've been to lots of places that have a lot of hype that haven't lived up to the hype. That place is pretty impressive. And I will say everybody did pretty well with the altitude except for me. I feel like I was the only one that really got sick from it. And I only expected to get a headache from the altitude sickness, but I don't know if any of you have ever experienced altitude sickness. It is strange because it makes you nauseous, it makes you headachy, it makes you dumb. You get dizzy. You can't figure. It almost feels like a long time ago. I used to know what a hangover was, way before Jesus. It felt like the worst hangover of your life that just never let up. Terrible. So for Machu Picchu.
Let me jump in there real quick. Machu Picchu is right at 8,000 feet. Our hotel was at 11,200 feet. So right, we actually
Cusco.
went down.
Right. We went down
to get to
Machu Picchu.
Yeah. So when the longer we stayed at altitude, the more the lack of the oxygen that you're used to at sea level changes you
Changes
get
how you think.
you get more like hangry and you know more irritable, and it definitely has an effect.
For those of you who know me, adding more to irritable is not. It's like, what, more? More, right? Jesus was with us on this trip,
Yeah,
for sure.
indeed, right.
For sure. All right, so Machu Picchu was a train ride from Cusco and then a train ride back to Cusco. And then we flew back to Lima, of course, and then we flew to Juliaca, the region of Juliaca, which is even higher altitude. So they were kind of breaking us in with Cusco because we were going to go even higher. And then you can see the map there. This is what I mean by off the trail. Juliaca is already off the beaten path, but then once we landed, that's the route we followed to get to where we went. The lovely woman, the sheep herder, shepherdess, I guess, we just kind of saw on the way to our first school because, like I said, it was, gosh, I don't know, 2.5-hour drive to get to the first school. So anytime they see elderly senior adults, they love to give them Barbie dolls and balls and stuff too, and they're touched. A lot of these old people have never received a gift in their life, so it means a lot to them. And so those were the kids that we saw in the town, maybe the city, I don't know, Puno, which is in Juliaca, and then Umpuco, which was the same day, was another hour and a half, even further of a drive out into the middle of absolutely nowhere. And Kathy wanted to talk about this one.
So, yeah, they had asked these, I think it was 3 schools or 4. There wasn't enough time to visit all of them, and they had visited them in the past, and so they asked the schools to meet us in this field. And that's all it was. It was just off the highway. And we pull up, and there's these little groups of kids. And they did a little dance for us, and they were in their native costume. And what happened was the teachers had brought them, and one of the teachers started, they asked each of the teachers to speak. And this one lady came, I think, the furthest. They actually had to walk like an hour and a half to get there. So all these little kids, well, hang on, just wait. How I remember it is the school, this one little boy walked 3 hours this morning, he and his mom, because he lived an hour and a half from the school. So they all ended up walking there, and the teachers are actually, they get their training and they get certified, and then they get sent someplace. It's not like you get to choose where you go to teach. So some of these teachers are in these remote areas, and this one teacher gave a really impassioned speech about they don't have anything for the kids because a lot of the supplies are supposed to be bought by the parents. Well, the parents don't have the money for it. And so because of how far out they are, she knew that off the trail, and especially Juan, is kind of has several people's ears to help. And so, that the kids had to walk so far. There was one group that had a van, so they loaded up and they took off when we were finished. But the others just kind of picked up their balls and their toys, and you saw them starting to walk back. And it really impacts you about, we wouldn't have let our kids walk 3 hours. And for them it was just we needed to get there. They had that, they made the decision they were going to be there because they knew that the kids would enjoy it. And that's a lot of determination, that's a lot of responsibility. And the kids' faces when they got their toys, it was totally worth it. But when you go on a mission trip, you don't expect to meet all these little kids in the middle of a field. And thankfully, it was a beautiful day. It was a little bit chilly, but the sun was shining, and I think they would have been there even if it had been raining. They were that determined to meet up with them.
Not only was that just a field, this was mountain desert for as far as you could see. There's nothing out here. Zero.
Yeah, and I was really moved. It's a testament to the value that they put on education, well, and probably also food, because I think a lot of times the only time the kids get food is when they get to school. But if you think that ball and that toy cost $5, how many of our kids would walk up the street for a $5 toy? How many of them would walk an hour and a half to go to school? They just wouldn't, right? And so the cynical, ugly part of me just thinks, we are so spoiled in the United States. Kids are so entitled, everybody, blah, 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 blah. But honestly, what I hope everyone is left with is just an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the blessings that we have in this country. Because those kids, they weren't slogging along like, ugh. I mean, look at their faces. They were thrilled to have walked 3 hours to get $5 worth of toys. Thrilled.
And the dancing that they did, they loved putting on a show for us. That was awesome.
Yeah, I tell you what, to bring it back to the Bible and hospitality and how important hospitality was in Israel, the Peruvians are all about hospitality, and it doesn't matter if they have absolutely nothing. You can bet that if they knew we were coming, they have swept their house 3 times. They have put on the best clothes that they have. They are clean. And they will offer the food portion sizes that they offered us. Goodness gracious, I don't know how they did it. They have very little to give, but whatever they have, they wanted to offer their best to us. Okay, so also out of Juliaca, we got to go to Lake Titicaca, which I was super duper excited about, hearing about the floating islands and wanting to see all of that in action. And so we visited 2 different native tribes that live on these floating islands. This group, the first one to talk about was the second one that we saw, are called the Uros. And they live close enough to the main city and the docks and the marinas and whatnot that they have learned how to play the tourist game, I guess, right? So people who go to Lake Titicaca just for the tourist experience, they get a lot of them. And so they make all of their handcrafted goods and stuff, and they sell them, and you can see all the bright colors, and it's a very well done village. It's still very, very small. It's just a small little floating island. I would say maybe the size of this room. And so on that island, you're talking about a dozen families maybe, all in their little one-room places, and then they've got a little area cut out where the kids kick the ball and stuff. So that was super happy, super great time. The kids sang "Row Your Boat" to us in their Peruvian accents, and it was adorable. But then the Capiuros, who apparently way back in the history of these native groups, these indigenous tribes, broke away from the Uros over something. They live much further out on the lake, way back in the middle of nowhere, are completely destitute. They don't see any tourism at all. The water was low when we were there, so we couldn't actually even get to their island. So they all rowed out to our boat in their boats to get their toys. And the leader, each of these tribes, these indigenous people have like a chief. I don't know if they call them chiefs, but there's a leader of their group. And he definitely was asking for more help, for blankets, for warm clothing before the cold weather hit again. So Southern Hemisphere, it was pretty cold when we were there, but not too bad, but that's their summer. So cold weather is coming, and he was basically asking for a blanket for each family and some more food to help them get through the cold weather. So if you're keeping track, we need school supplies for the kids in Oaxaca, and clothing and food for the Capiuros. Yes.
This tribe, the Capiuros, they had never been made contact with through off-the-trail missions.
Right.
This is their first contact with off-the-trail missions. So through, maybe through the Euros, the first group, but I don't know how they found out. But anyway, they were thrilled to be, for us to make contact with them, and they're like, please come back. They need pretty much everything.
So it
for
was
sustenance.
actually the kid on the boat driver assistant or whatever, that knew about them and brought the need to Kim and Juan. Because of Juan's presence with his television show, a lot of people reach out to them and say, there's this need, there's this need. They say hardly ever does anyone reach out to ask for help for themselves, but they all ask for help for somebody that they've run into, that they know. And for the cynics among you, Juan is very diligent about making sure that the need is real. If he hasn't seen it himself, like in this situation, he asked the boat driver to go out there and take a video. And he videoed the situation and their needs, brought it back to Juan, and Juan said, yep, we can do that. And so we went out there. And now that they've asked for this, since they came out on the boats and we didn't actually see their island, Juan tasked this young man with going back out there, getting back on the island, and videoing actually how many families are there, how much food do they need, how many blankets do they need, so that we can help them without, I don't want to say being taken advantage of, because they definitely need stuff, but being good stewards with very limited resources. Okay, and then we flew back to Lima, and then we flew to Iquitos. And I don't know how that first picture made it on there. You didn't even want to talk about this, John, but I think maybe you should.
So that picture's on the left side. Those are grubs. And on a
Flame
stick,
grilled.
on a skewer.
So they're grilled.
And we...
Street food, man.
It was street food. We had visited a couple of the indigenous tribes along the river one day, a different river, and the river that bled into the Amazon River.
Right.
But we were upriver from the Amazon a little ways, saw two different tribes, had a wonderful time with them. In fact, is that next picture one of those?
No, that's the native
okay.
house.
Excuse me. But anyway, after we had visited these two indigenous tribes on the river, we were on our way back and we saw some street food. So Juan had the drivers pull over and we got out and walked and we saw those grubs on skewers. And they said that they tasted good. And I said, all right, I'll try it. Oh, come on.
Tastes like bacon and
when you
peanut butter.
first look, now, Lynn, I could tell you this, it was so funny because, I ate it and I was like expecting not to like it. And I was completely surprised. I was like, whoa, this is good. And I just noshed on them. And so I was trying to convince Lynn to try it. And I was successful. But when her first bite was like, she took a bite, and you could tell she was ready for that
I was ready to
ugly, throw up kind of, face. Then she went, oh, they were really good. So anyway, yeah, I do too. So we'll show you that if you
As
like.
Simba would say, slimy yet satisfying, right? Isn't that
It
what they ate in
was
The Lion King?
Really good. Okay, enough of
So
that.
the next picture, the next two is coming up from this little kind of hole in the wall. On the river there, they've got what they call the native house, which is sort of like a hostel for indigenous people if they want to come in the city to study at the university, or if they need medical care from the hospital or anything like that. And so we visited there. And then we went to, every single town has like a town square or town city circle, kind of thing with the pretty letters and a pretty tree, and everybody hangs out there all the time. And so Iquitos is actually a place that Juan was stationed for a while. So he and Kim lived there for like 3 years, had an apartment there, and that was their base for a while. So we went into the park, and what happened, Kathy?
Well, I think that was where we went for pizza. Was that the pizza? Or that was Chinese, which didn't...
That's
it
not the
wasn't.
important part. We met a man.
Right, right. And so we were just walking around the square. It was nighttime, it was pretty. And this young man is kind of like looking at us. And we had two of Juan's old policemen with us as bodyguards. And so I wasn't afraid at all, but this young man walked up to Juan and he said, "Are you Juan Silva Bocadera?" And he said yes, and he said, "Well, you came and visited my school 8 years ago and gave me toys." And he said, that was the first toy I ever got. And part of this giving of the toys thing, I don't think we've talked about it. When Juan was a child, somebody came and gave him like a little wooden truck that they had carved, and and he said it always stuck with him that someone had done that for him. And I think it's out of that feeling that you can reach people just by giving them these little gifts. And that young man said he cried all the way home. And Kim afterwards said, "We did not set that up. That was just God kind of affirming to them as well to us that what they were doing has an impact." And it was an affirmation from God that what they were doing, it was small and tiny, but that people were remembering it and had an impact on them. And I think he was now a tour guide.
He was.
So
he had stayed in school, was going to college, and leading tours around the city.
Yeah. So, you know.
Cool, cool. All right, and then we went back to Lima, and you guys flew home. And we got on a bus. I think the first one was, it was supposed to be like 27 hours, but it got in early, 26 hours. I'd have rather been on it the extra hour than to have driven. Those people drive like crazy people. So it was a double-decker overnight bus, and this took us to mountain jungle areas of Chimbote and Moybamba. La 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 Moyabamba. Every time I would hear a word there, I would have to put it into a song so I could remember what it was. So Chimbote, most of Peru is very, very, I don't want to say dirty because that has a connotation that I don't want, but silty, dusty. The billboards are all covered in a film of dust. Every building is covered in a film of dust. Nothing ever seems clean, but this was one of the worst, if you can just see the sand. And this is a good example of how I said if you just build a building, then you own it, and that's all you need to do. So, a couple pieces of tin, put a roof up, and call it your home. And so we went there, and these kids came down from the hills like a swarm to get these toys. But look at how pretty that baby is. She's so cute. So that was Chimbote. And then Moybamba. So I want to encourage you guys, if you are not already friends with Kim or following the Off the Trail Facebook page, you might want to do that because there are lots and lots of great videos that they put together that we didn't have time for today. But Moybamba is an area that after you took the plane to the middle of nowhere and then took a truck to the middle of nowhere, then you got in another truck and hit the jungle. And it was a mountain, wet clay jungle road up a mountain to a place where, and it was raining. It was not a beautiful day. It was cold and wet and miserable. And as we were finally pulling into this area where the school was, you could see kids' faces like they didn't think we were coming because, not just because it was raining, but because the roads are so treacherous when they're wet. They thought that for sure that we would give up and we wouldn't go. And so when we showed up, they were just ecstatic to see us. The school ladies fed us lunch. And this young man's name is Moises. They might call him Moses, but it's spelled Moises. And just the sweetest, sweetest man. And it was one of those situations where he was just assigned that, you know, he got out of college with an education degree, and they said, this is where you're going. Went there, didn't have a vehicle. So the first time that he went there, he walked 17 hours. Walked 17 hours to get to the school, and the school is so remote from where the people live. When he first started going there, it was a 4-day week and then a 3-day weekend, and he would go, you know, up the mountain, and they live at the school for the 4 days, and then they go back down the mountain. He found some other teachers, saved some money, started going on a motorcycle, found some more teachers, got a pickup truck, and then they started carpooling, and somewhere somebody decided that that was too dangerous for that many trips and all of that stuff. So now they're up there for 3 weeks, and then they go home for a week. And I think he has had the opportunity now, because once you're in a place like that for a while, you can apply, as long as you stay in school, to get a higher education. When you get to a certain point, then you can request where you want to teach. But I can't imagine making that trip up there another time, and he does it constantly, he and the other teachers, their dedication to those kids. And so that was a theme throughout, teachers really investing in their kids and going to bat for their kids and feeding their kids and showing up for their kids. And so those were kids. Moses had a different school last year when Kim and Juan met him, and got transferred to one that was even deeper and further, and said, you have to come see these kids. They've never been visited. The parents have never been visited. Like they live up in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And they are so, so thrilled to get visitors of any kind. And Kim sent me a picture that Moses threw a little graduation party for the 3 of his 5th graders that were going to be leaving the elementary school. And man, you would have thought they were going to the prom or getting married or something. They were decked out, so fancy and so proud of themselves. And special people in that country really look out for those kids. And so, but that's one of the videos you want to see. There was a point when we were coming down the hill, and the pickup truck literally went, this is the angle of the hill, it went sideways, kind of like you would do if you were on a icy slope of snow or something, and you kind of turn sideways to do this with your feet. That's how we were going down the hill in the truck. It was terrifying. So I got to teach them an English saying. I said, we call that white knuckling. We were all white knuckling. I mean, we were literally just yeah, people die. But we didn't, and it was wonderful and amazing. And so then we went back to Lima, and we stayed in Lima for a little bit this time. And the big picture there is Juan's elementary school, which is now high school. Juan grew up very, 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 very poor, and his family still lives in his childhood home. They've since added running water and electricity, but he grew up without either. And right down the road, his old elementary school had been turned into a high school at this point, and I'm so confused. I'm like, why are we going to a high school? It doesn't make any sense. But they have an evening program. It's kind of like a GED program and a culinary arts program, and they challenged the young women that were in that program to bring in children from their neighborhoods that were in need. And so they all brought them in, and we gave all those toys out. And of course, when we're there, they tell Juan, oh, they need a new stove. So here's the deal. Everywhere we went, it scratched the surface of something, you know, and it brought joy to the kids. But I went selfishly thinking, I don't want to go back to Peru to pray with all the dying people. I want to go make the kids happy, you know? And it didn't matter. I cried every single place we were. But would definitely do it again, and would encourage you to do it if you get the opportunity. But so many needs. And I am terrible with technology, so this is the best I could do. If you want to learn more, as I mentioned, 2 different Facebook pages. Kim's is Kim Off the Trail, or Kim Silva. You can find her, or you can go straight to Off the Trail Missions. Kimberly Silva. And then they've actually got a website that's not affiliated with Facebook, which is offthetrail.net. If you want to know how you can give, this is an even uglier slide, but lots and lots of ways she does. PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, any of that. I'm going to see if I can get Brenda to just put this slide in the weekly update so that you guys can... Right, or the last thing at the bottom. You can just write a check to CWP, put OTT in the memo line, and we'll make sure that she gets it. I hope you heard all of the needs. And Kim said to me, she said, I feel bad when I go visit your church because I feel like all I'm ever doing is begging for money, but there's so many needs. So I want to assure everybody that after being there, Kim is not pocketing any of this money. She doesn't pay herself a salary. They give out of their own need to these people, and her heart is burdened for all of these things. You know, when the guy's like, yeah, we really could use new wheelchairs she goes, oh, my heart, I just really want to give that to them. And we're kind of thinking, yeah, that'd be great, but how about these people that need food? But how about these people who need blankets? But all this, listen, you could give as much as you could possibly give, but I tell you, if you were there and you met one of those kids and knew that $5 changed their whole life that way, it makes it easier to want to give. And one thing that I didn't know, and I don't know why I didn't know because I should have known, this is the only church that supports Kim on a monthly basis. She has another church that gives for special... life community, but what's it called? Special, not events, special needs. Yeah, like the, I think they gave a lot to the new dining room, stuff like that. So like once or twice a year, they'll all take up something and give. But this is the only church that gives to her every month. And so I would encourage you, as I mentioned, she's one of like 8 or 10 missionaries that we support. But every year we try to offer the opportunity, and since it's the beginning of the year, I'm going to offer it to you, for you to think about your monthly mission giving, which is separate from your tithe. If you can up that a little bit, we can help make some of these things happen. Yes. Right. Not specifically. If you're giving just because of this presentation to Off the Trail, put OTT. What I'm encouraging you to do is to make a monthly commitment to missions at the church, and then that gets to all of them. Because I'm sure all of our missionaries could come up here and say the same thing about all of the needs that they have.